messenger of peace. In the truth of the journey within incarnation, every beloved will come to the realization that while their remembering is occurring, that they're being called through that remembering to be the messenger of peace. It's a beautiful calling, but to bring those elements together of remembering, wanting to remember, and accepting that you are a messenger of peace through that remembering is not a burden. It is the gift that expands your own remembering. When you bless and bring peace to every situation, your remembering expands right in that moment. You may even remember being part of the creation of God that has always served, that has always been called to stand in the light of truth and convey that light to each beloved. What gets healed first and foremost is the narcissism of the ego that has, from the beginning of incarnation, depended and focused on what about me? The what about me is a painful place because it denotes so clearly that the belief that brought that question is believing in lack, in scarcity, in all ways. Lack and scarcity are sometimes thought of as monetary, but that's just one of the expressions. The main element of the belief of lack is that you are alone, that you are without the support, the love, the strength that is needed to walk the journey of love. And in that scarcity, the what about me affirms or tries to affirm that scarcity is real and that there is always the danger in the world of being without. But each beloved has incarnated already set up in the belief of separation. As soon as the baby looks at its hand, it sees separation. It sees my hand. It sees its own identity, and even sees its own identity reflected back through each one that looks at this baby. Each beloved who looks at the baby is looking through a perception of separation and puts on that incarnation of that child more story, more identity, unconsciously. But this young incarnation already has a story, already has an identity that is bringing into this lifetime. And that story is the same as all stories, all identities, but it has just enough personal identity within it that it makes that beloved affirm their separation. And the whole journey of returning is letting go of that false identity that was incarnated as a person, separate and alone. The return to union is held as fearful. To lose your identity, to lose your specialness, and the fear of actually becoming one with those that you have in the past looked through the lens of seeing enemies, looking through the lens of seeing competitors. Why would anybody look at others as competitors except for the belief of scarcity? All those others that you see become, in the mind, the competitors for affection, for love, for worth, for positions within the world. But the scarcity is a lie. There is no scarcity in love. There is no scarcity in God. And it's opening to that divine manifestation of love and joining in that love, and no longer willing to play the game of lack in all of its expressions. All you have to do is have one piece of cake in the center of a room and see what urges show up. It's not because everybody's addicted to cake. It's because of the belief of scarcity. It's time to let all the addictions go, because the ego is addiction. The fears, the belief in lack, the identities that separate, all of it can be released into love itself. And take your rightful place as the expression, the message of God that you carry within your heart, bringing peace to all creation. You have that power. Allow it. Invite it. Embrace it. In this moment, truly, there is only love. If you see something else, if you feel something else, recognize it for what it is. It's fear, and it's a self-attack. And it is not God's will for you to suffer through your mind, give the mind into love. One of the blessings that humanity has are prayers. Prayers that come through mantras, prayers that come through meditations, prayers that come through hymns, prayers that just rest in your heart and hold you. Allow this prayer to come into your heart. Breathe it, drink of it, rest in it. Oh, teach me to open my heart to those who come here to be healed. Teach me to open my heart to this love, to heal all this pain of this world. We have strayed from the love of our Father and wandered in pain since our birth. It was Jesus who came here to save us all, to release all this pain here on earth. Oh, my mother, the queen of the sea, it's your love that I feel inside me. Teach me to love from the depth of my heart, to heal all the pain that I see. My Father is here with his love. He knows how to care for us all. He loves everyone who has answered this call, all those who have answered the call. The call, so breathtakingly beautiful, so perfect, so filled with the power of love. Answer it in every moment. I ask for comfort. I ask for comfort from the kings, from the heavens, the forest, and the sea. And I ask for comfort from the Queen to come and illuminate me. I ask for comfort from the princes, from the heavens, the forest, and the sea. And I ask for comfort from the princesses to come and illuminate me. I ask for comfort from the angels, from the heavens, the forest, and the sea. And I ask for comfort from the saints to come and illuminate me. Eu peço conforto às reis do céu, da floresta, do mar. Peço conforto às rainhas para nos iluminar. Eu peço conforto às príncipes do céu, da floresta, do mar. Peço conforto às princesas para nos iluminar. Eu peço conforto aos anjos do céu, da floresta, do mar. Peço conforto aos santos para nos iluminar. I ask them all to come and illuminate. Do you have that realization of the power that you have in asking for all the saints, for all the angels, for all the beings of light to come and illuminate your mind and your heart? Do you eagerly invite them to show you the way? Because that's what they're all waiting for, is for your invitation and your prayer to speak as deeply and as loudly as possible. Don't let a day go by that you aren't praying during the day for the illumination. Illuminate your mind and heart through your prayer, and then extend that illumination to whoever you're with, so that they also are in the grace and the blessing of that illumination, even if they're not aware of it. Bring it to everyone. Let the divine illuminate your mind and your heart, so that the words that are spoken and the thoughts that you have are of benevolence and charity and kindness and peace. And then that is what you pour into the world. What a blessing that you have that power, if you will use it. Express magnificence. What is the key to untie the knot of your mind's suffering? What is the esoteric secret to slay the crazed one whom each has wed? And who can ruin our hearts and eyes' exquisite tender landscape? All teachers have found two emerald words that restore the eye, that I now can cling to as I would sacred tresses of my beloved's hair. Express magnificence. Own it, express it, invite it, learn the truth of it. My dear, always express magnificence. What is the key to untie the knot of the mind's suffering? Intention, benevolent intention and thought through sound and movement. Always expressing magnificence. It's calling you not to settle, not to believe in the lies of the ego's addiction. In the eyes of the ego's addiction, there is no magnificence. There is struggle, there is pain, there is heartache, there is jealousy and greed, there is defense. But where did the magnificent go? It's waiting within you to discover the truth of this magnificence that you carry, because you are the creation of God. It isn't a special magnificence that is something you fight for to be better than others. It's the open arms of connection, of unity, that you bring everyone with you into that magnificence by seeing everyone through the magnificence. Let each beloved and their magnificence take your breath away. And when you are with the friend within the heart, let the magnificence really speak to you of God's grace, of what He created. You are created whole and complete and the light of God. But to acknowledge it, to remember it, to own it, to offer it, it's the journey of this lifetime. What is the esoteric secret to slay the crazed one whom each of us did wed? The crazed one. the difficulty in being in the illusion is actually that, and it isn't seen as crazed, it's seen as smart, it's seen as controlling, it's seen as better than, but see it as the craze that it is. When you are not at peace, it is a place of feeling crazed. What is it to feel crazed? It's that place of fear that starts looking and trying to grab and trying to control something so that you can come back to peace. But by controlling anything, it doesn't bring peace. It brings more of the crazed identity. Crazed is the place where you recognize how close you are to really dancing with the insanity. Every worry is like a stab in the heart. Because every worry says, God is not with me. Love is not here. I'm all alone. I'm without. I have to defend. I have to figure things out. And everybody can feel the crazed place that everyone has gone to in that worry, in that fear. What is it to come back to truth and deny the crazed one, the crazed identity that has and does want to be in control or take over? And yet, the power of your choice, of choosing peace, of choosing to be led, can bring you right into the glimpse of heaven that is right here, where all of the ideas of separation just for a moment can fall away, and there's a respite. And in that moment, there is an, oh yeah, I forgot. I am the creation of God. I have to embrace it, because it's what everything is for. Absolutely everything. Every single situation of every day has at its center the teaching and the remembering of what you truly are. And what you truly are can be said over and over and over again, because it's so easily forgotten. As soon as the fear drops in, you invite the fear, you're familiar with it. As soon as you invite it in, the crazed place begins again. But take a note of what was just said. When you invite fear in, the ego would like you to think that you're just walking along, minding your own business, being a really good person, and all of a sudden, fear just smacks you. And there's always a surprise. Where did that fear come from? Eventually, you connect the dots, or the Holy Spirit connects the dots for you, to actually recognize that the fear is a choice. It's the weapon. It's the weapon of choice. The weapon of choice that the ego uses almost exclusively, because everything within the world is based on fear. And yet, it's not the truth of you, not at all. And there is another relationship within the world that does not tolerate fear. And it is about tolerating. Don't tolerate it. Now, that's easy to say, don't tolerate fear. But can you not tolerate fear? Yes, you can. Of course you can. Because it is not natural for you to be in fear. It may seem natural to you because you've developed a strong relationship with fear. But in truth, fear is not in charge. Fear is not actually real. Fear is a delusional state of battle, of separation, and of the belief in the power of separation itself. In the journey of love, fear plays such a strong role. It wants to control everything, and it wants to keep score. More than anything else, it wants to keep score. But be aware that when the ego wants to keep score of being betrayed, of being unfairly treated, of being seen as less, it's for a very special purpose that the fear has. The fear totally wants your full attention and wants you to keep score of every perceived wrongdoing. Not your own wrongdoings, but everybody else's. It's one of the paramount defense systems. When you want to keep score of all of the wrongdoings of others, there's another element that gets played out. The ego is telling you while it's playing it out, this is great. You're getting it. You're putting everybody in their place. You're finally paying back all of these wrongdoings of your past. But what actually happens is that the fear and the condemnation seep into your idea of who you are. And as it seeps in, you become more and more terrified of your own self-judgment. Because every judgment that you have of what somebody else has done or not done lives within you. And it's really the ruse of seeing it as somebody else when you actually believe it about yourself. How much self-hatred can an ego make? It can make so much self-hatred, even though it's illusion, that it runs the whole universe, not the universe, but at least this world. That you see everyone as an identity, as limitation, as struggling, and that you see everyone as their potential of wrongdoing. There is a place of pain within the ego identity that is astounding. It's how you see yourself. The false identity that everybody makes is so devastatingly inaccurate. It's so devastatingly a lie that it has no way of being related at all to the truth. You can't take a belief about yourself and reconcile it with reasoning. It's what the ego likes to do. You think of yourself as some limited idea that maybe somebody doesn't like you or somebody is upset with you. And where do you go with that thought? You go to the reasoning that should alleviate it. Well, no, why should they be mad at me? I did this, I did this, I did this. I've always been nice, I've always done this. This is a road that goes nowhere, because the agreement, the idea that of you being unloved or not worthy of love or somebody being upset with you cannot be reasoned by the lie that made it. When you try to reason with your goodness, or that you haven't done anything, you're playing right into the hands of the ego. The hands of the ego, the ego wants you to try to reason it. But here's where the healing really is. The healing is completely in the hands of God and does not at all touch or try to reason what you are believing. So the ego's way of placating is, well, I tried to do my best. I don't know why that they'd be upset with me. I did this, I did this, I did this. And there's no sense within of relief. As a matter of fact, it just gets more agitated. So what is the answer? The answer is the refusal to accept that you can be held as unworthy of love. The answer is in the refusal to accept that someone else's ego, mind, has an opinion that means something. It has no meaning. And that's where the remedy is. You are believing in something that has no truth and no remedy. And it has no remedy because it has no truth. And the only place that you can go for truth is to the truth of God. I cannot be unworthy of love. I cannot be condemned. I cannot be seen as less than the truth of God. I can't be that. And whatever ego is saying that they see it that way, it means nothing other than that, beloved, is then the call for love. They are crying for love. They are crying for truth. And while you're busy defending your ego, from their ego, you don't hear the cry for love, because the narcissism of the ego is saying, no, this is where I have to defend myself. I'm familiar with it. But there's nothing to defend. Imagine that you get to a place where someone has a criticism of something that you either did or say, or that you look, or that how you walk, or whatever it happens to be, and that you laugh, not at them because they're in pain, but that you laugh at the mere thought of criticism. You can't do anything that deserves criticism. Criticism is not correction. Correction is love. Not from another ego, but from the place of the heart and the truth of God that brings correction to you. The correction is, no, my love, you cannot be bad or wrong. It's not possible. It doesn't exist. It isn't the truth. And your acceptance of that transforms your own heart, and then you bring that transformation to the beloved who believe their ego's criticism. This is not a place of defense. There is no defending your okayness. There's nothing that can be defended in the truth of love. It's a fact. You don't defend a fact. You don't defend the truth. You accept it. And you hold it in that place of peace and contentment that you are here to serve that beloved's cry for love, and to not even give that criticism any light of day, because it absolutely means nothing. And when it is you criticizing you, it's the same process. It's the same healing. That you see that whatever criticism or doubt that you have can mean nothing, because it's made up in your own mind. And the whole time, Spirit of Love is whispering to you, showing you the truth. And it has to be accepted, because that's what you're here for. You're here to remember, I am only upset because I see something that's not there. How many times a day could you use that prayer? As many times as you think there is something to be upset about. As soon as you have a reaction to something, bring in the medicine. Whatever the medicine happens, whatever words the medicine conveys, but they all convey the same thing. You are the light of God. I am upset because I see something that's not even there. Can you embrace that? Really embrace it? Or do you just forget and play the game of defending or running away, or whatever it is that the ego does to counter the belief of criticism? Why is criticism so powerful a weapon? Because it is so believed. As soon as somebody says, I don't like your hair, something that means absolutely nothing, but as soon as somebody says, I don't like your hair, that's all you're thinking about all day. Why don't they like my hair? What did they see that I don't see? Or does that mean that everybody doesn't like it? That everybody is upset about it? What? It takes and like pulls a rug out from underneath you because it's still so seems so real that a criticism could have meaning. And it absolutely doesn't mean anything. Somebody says, I don't like the timbre of your voice. I don't like how you talk. Do you change how you talk because of the criticism? Or do you ask the divine, is this the voice that I can use for your love? Because if it isn't a helpful voice, then you have the power to change it. Not you as the beloved, but God has the power of changing your voice if that's what's helpful. It's all in the hands of the divine, everything. But what are you fighting with? What are you believing in the criticism? And why is the criticism coming toward you? It doesn't come toward you for nothing. It comes toward you so that you can learn that it isn't real, but also that sometimes that call for love says, maybe they're criticizing because I forget to love, because I haven't been answering the call for love. Maybe they don't know why, but I can use everything. You can use everything that's offered for deeper healing. Everything is for learning, and everything is the opportunity of coming back to love over and over and over again. If it takes 100 times in a day, you come back 100 times because you're being called to express your magnificence. And you cannot express your magnificence while you are believing in these little side stories that are being made up. They don't have any worth. And they distract, and they are part of the addiction. Addiction is something that the world deals with all the time. But what's not really seen is that beyond those addictions of heroin, of opiates, of alcohol, of shopping, of gambling, of whatever else there is in the addiction world, sex, you can add everything to it, to the addiction of the ego. Absolutely everything. Every thought that is not of God is part of an addiction. Just try it. You're thinking on your own, thinking about whatever it is that you're thinking about on your own, and thought starts grabbing for the next thought. And that thought wants the completion of the thought because those thoughts are believed to be helping you, giving you control in some way, that you know something. But it's all addiction because those thoughts are just separate thoughts that you've made up. They're not of love, they're not of peace, they're not of harmony, but they are of addiction. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing that you do is you look at the clock and you decide by looking at the clock whether you are tired or not. If you didn't look at the clock, you wouldn't have necessarily as strong of an illusion to look at. If you woke up in the morning and did not allow yourself to assess whether you had enough sleep or not, it would start an entire healing of your addiction to the idea of time and how much sleep is necessary. It's a practice. It doesn't usually happen the first time. But the more that you let go of time, the more truth can come through and be with you and even give you energy that you didn't know was possible. There's an entire other world that is waiting for the addictions to be healed. An addiction to worry benefits from others who have the same addiction. Agreements. This is why every time there's an addiction of some kind, including worry, that you're being called to step back and let God lead, to break the trance of that addiction so that you're not joining others in the same addiction. All you have to do is talk to someone about pain and suffering, the addiction to pain and suffering, the addiction of the identity to pain and suffering, and that wants to be shared with other addictions. Is that different than those who drink with others for the company of that identity? No, it's the same thing. It's really looking at the addictions and being aware of how embedded the addictions are. How does it become an addiction? I'm going to just use when I only liked spring and summer. That was an addiction. It was an addiction to a circumstance of outside weather that I felt was necessary to feel better. I made that all up, but I was addicted to it. I couldn't let go of it until the divine transformed it. But to recognize the addiction is absolutely essential, because the game that the ego plays is, no, these aren't addictions. These are normal places of staying in worry, staying in concerns, staying in fears of all kinds. There are such habits that once you start surrendering them into the hands of God, it's astounding how many follow, because they're all such addictions. Everybody has known people that are addicted to crises, addicted to problems. Why is there a teaching that says, let me recognize the problem so that it can be solved? And then right with that teaching, it's, let me recognize there is no problem. You recognize the problem so it can be solved, because there is only one problem. The problem, if you want to call it that, is that you believe that you're separate from God. When you believe that you're separate from God, all addictions have their way, because everything becomes a problem. Everything becomes looking through that lens. So if the answer is that there is no problem because you are not separate from God, so how can that problem be real then what do you do with all of the addiction that you have to the problems that you make up in your everyday? Do you consider it a problem to be behind a car that is driving slower than you are? Or do you see it as the opportunity of slowing down and learning a place of patience, and that this is the perfect learning? Because driving at the speed that you want, your habit, is addiction. It's addiction because you have a whole identity that goes with it. And it latches on to everything else. All of it being addiction. Everything that is pain and suffering is addiction. There was a beloved who struggled tremendously with her identity from where she was born, seeing herself as part of the problem of the world because of where she was born. And because of the quote unquote wrongdoing that her country had participated in. So she saw herself as responsible for pain and suffering of others, and she needed to be punished. That was her addiction. She constantly looked for the punishment, constantly looked for actually that everything that she thought was right. She looked for evidence all the time through every situation to find the evidence of her wrongdoing from the past. So much did she believe this that when she was passing out of the body, she would not allow herself to have medication, not because she had a deeper belief. It wasn't about that. It was about the need to suffer, to be paying for her sins, that she denied herself medication that was available for the relief and the release. And when she finally had someone call and she asked me, is this what I need to be doing? Is being in such pain in order to pay for the sins of the country that I was born in? And I assured her that she didn't have to suffer in any way, that it wasn't God's will for her to suffer, and that the medication could be the gift from God to release her from this upside down identity, this addiction. And she took the medication, and within 20 minutes she passed. And she passed with a deeper awareness of God's grace, of God's love. There was no reason for her to have an addiction to suffering like that, except that it is addiction. It doesn't make sense. The ego is insane and holds that insanity for you and with you. Don't believe it. If it's not peace, if it's not harmony, if it's not joy, it's fabricated. It has no truth of God in it. Come back again and again and again to peace and offering love, offering blessings, because that is the truth of you. That is what you have. And that is what the world is waiting for. So here's a prayer. Be still an instant and forget all the things that you have learned, all the thoughts that you've had, and every preconception that you've held of what things mean and what their purpose is. This is a call for deep love for yourself. Be still an instant and forget, surrender all things that you've learned in this world. None of them have been the truth of you. Absolutely none of them. So everything has to be emptied. Just come empty. It's like throwing up all of the garbage that you've agreed with and that you've played with and that you've danced with. Let yourself remember that your ideas are not what the world is for, that your ideas are not being called to be manifested as singular ideas of your own mind, because all of the thoughts are coming from the past. If they're not in the thought of God, they're coming from the past. Let yourself remember that your own ideas are not what the world is for. You do not know. You don't know how to look at any situation and see the truth. Embrace that, because it's the gift of transformation. Because once you accept that, it becomes an open door to knowledge, to the intervention of the creative thought of love. Let every image held of everyone be loosened from your mind and swept away. Every image. Who are the ones that have images? Everybody that you know. Who are you holding as an image of a particular role? Let them free. Let them go. Be innocent of judgment, unaware of any thoughts of evil or of good that ever crossed your mind of anyone. This is a clean sweep. This is a cleansing. This is open the gates and let yourself see and let go of all of the made up ideas of everyone. Now, you don't see them anymore as you thought that they were. Now you have the opportunity of setting them free as the divine light that they are. And now you are free to learn from these beloveds and learn of them brand new. This is the road to freedom, to clear your mind and clear your heart. Only be in quiet. Only be in quiet. Does that mean that you never speak? No, but it's a quiet mind and a quiet heart that is assured, and you hold that assurance that you are the love of God. You hold that assurance. You don't allow the doubt. You will need no rule but this, but just to be quiet. That will lift you above the thinking of the world and free your vision from the body's eyes so that you are able to see through love. Only be still and listen. The whole universe is wanting to teach you. The whole universe, all of love, all divine beings are all carrying the same teaching, love. And learning to be quiet, to accept that place, and to be able to connect and join with every beloved that is your guide and all the beloveds that have been sent to you. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. Can you actually walk in the world while you are being still and putting aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. You can practice this while you're walking in the world in whatever way. It's just a learning. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false. No, really, empty your mind of all thoughts of what you think is true or false. Where does true and false come from? True and false comes from the past, always. It has no place else to come by except the past. So if you didn't appreciate how you were treated growing up, you can bet that when you are stuck in the mind of thinking between true and false, that you're back in the past, taking the place of anyone that you thought treated you unfairly. You don't need them anymore. You have your own thoughts. Your own thoughts, because you projected those thoughts onto those other beloveds, and then they reflected it back to you. But now is the time of healing, of true healing, that you reject the true and the false from the past. It has no reflection, no truth of your existence. And it has no truth of anyone that you walked with in the past. That's the power that you have, the power to really transform and to hold that deeply for everyone, but especially from within your heart. Every thought, letting go of every thought of good and bad, and every thought that judges it worthy, that you approve of. There's nothing to approve of or disapprove of. It's all, the temporary is all just the opportunity to use a form that is temporary, but to use it for love, instead of how it's being used in the world, which is for pain and suffering. To release all thoughts of which it is ashamed. This is the digging place too. What are you ashamed of? What do you think you've done in the past? What do you think you've said? What do you think you've believed? How did you judge? And you're ashamed of those things? Give it all to God. There is nothing to be ashamed of. There is nothing to hold guilt about. This is all totally fabricated. It's addiction. And it has no place that it fits. And if you're still using shame and guilt, and you're still using judgment to yourself or to others, now's the time for this to stop, because it absolutely is insane. It's crazed. It's upside down. It has no reality, none at all. And you're in a prison because of it. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought that the past has taught. Not one thought. So, who are you? Who are you? What is the thought from the past? How old you are? The culture, the background, those that you walked with? Poor or rich? It's all made up. It's totally fabricated. It has to all be let go. Do not bring with you one thought that the past has taught, nor one belief that you've ever learned before from anything. Forget this world. Forget all the teachings and come with holy, empty hands unto God. Empty your heart so that it can be filled with the truth that is really there. Stop playing the game of splitting your life into two factors. Here's my old life, and I worship all of this that's in my old life. I have resentment, I have hatred, I have addiction to the roles that everybody played. I'm still wanting their approval. I still want the recognition. All of this is the pain and suffering from the past. And then the other part of the life is split into the spiritual journey. You have to bring it all together and empty it all so that you can be free, so that you can hear the voice of God that is calling you in every moment to follow with love, to follow in truth. Forget this world. This is not because it's a hatred of the world, but because it has no reality. The true world is the world of divine creation, which you are a central element of. You are the Spirit of God. You are the light of creation. What does it mean to own that you are the light of creation? Does it mean you jump up and down and try to prove your worth? No, not absolutely not. You end the crazed part. It becomes that you can rest, that you can be at peace and truly rest in God without the agenda and attachment of your made up past. How does anyone know who you are except through what you offer? If you're offering your past, if you're offering your traditions, your habits, your ways, that's not you. What you're being called to is to allow the light of God to shine through because it's who you are, and bringing that light of peace and harmony to everyone. That's your natural state. That's your natural way. That's where the truth of you exists. And that's what you can bring as healing to all of humanity and to yourself. Because while you're in your habit of your identity and your addiction to the form that took, you've forgotten who you are. You've just forgotten. And it's the truth of you, your divine spirit is waiting to be recognized, not by others, but by your heart, owned. Yes, yes, you are the light of God. You are the innocence of God. You are the perfection of God. And you have nothing to do to, you can't prove it, you can't earn it, you can't defend it, but you can live it. You can rest in it, accepting God's will for you. That's all that you're doing, is accepting God's will and surrendering your beliefs that you made up that stood in the way of your divine self. Open the door, embrace your magnificence, express magnificence. When you express magnificence, you express it for all of humanity. You're holding the secret to everyone's remembering. By expressing your magnificence, you open the doors. Let it come through. Find the truth. Don't settle for the old, insane identity. It has no truth. And you're not here to make a better one. You're not here to improve on your old identity and make a better one of some fantasy that can be carried. You're here to transform and to empty all of that made up identity and find the jewel that's within that is the truth. You are the light of God. Amen. You are the light of God. It is so. Express that magnificence.